it's all nonsense. It's all air. And, speaking in simple heuristics, right? You tell children, don't take candy from strangers. There might be a lot of great strangers with a lot of fine candy. All right. It might taste great. It might be very safe, but you tell children that, right? So when you're investing, whether it's in crypto, quote unquote, or any of these startups, like just have Bitcoin. Like that's the heuristic. You might miss out on a little bit of candy, but you won't die.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. The Bitcoin block height is 820060, and the value of one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. Today's episode is Bitcoin Talk, where I talk with my guest about Bitcoin and many other things as well. Today that guest is Mike Jarmuz. Mike is Lightning Ventures managing partner and co-founder. From punk rock to venture capital, this dude's got some stories. We go deep down the Bitcoin venture capital rabbit hole in this episode. So whether you're a Bitcoin founder or aspiring founder looking for advice, an investor looking to put some money in Bitcoin-only companies, or just a pleb who likes to hear Bitcoiners talk shit about shitcoiners, this episode has something for you. Mike also digs into some of the Bitcoin companies he's really passionate about, and these are definitely names you should pay attention to. You're going to be hearing a lot more about them in the years to come. As always, you can watch the video version of this episode on Rumble, YouTube, or X by searching @WalkerAmerica, or listen on fountain.fm or wherever you get your podcast by searching for The Bitcoin Podcast. If you listen to The Bitcoin Podcast on Fountain, consider giving this show a boost or making a clip of something you found interesting. If you haven't checked out Fountain yet, I highly recommend it. You can send Bitcoin to your favorite podcasters and earn Bitcoin just for listening to this show. And if you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring another fucking Bitcoin podcast, hit me up on social media or through the website bitcoinpodcast.net. Without further ado, let's get into this Bitcoin talk with Mike Jarmuz. Well, hey there.
Well, hey there, buddy. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you. It's been way too long.
It's good to see you, too. It has been too long. I'm upset that I'm going to miss you next week. Everyone's going to miss you, but, you got bigger things going on, literally bigger things going on.
Carla has an impressive belly on her she is definitely ready to pop. We'll see if the little guy waits until he's supposed to, but you never know.
He might be born 2 weeks late or 2 weeks early. I was actually 2 weeks late. What about yourself? Were you right on time?
I think I was right on time. As far as I know, I guess I haven't asked my mom if I was a surprise in that sense at all. But yeah, we're bummed. We were looking forward to Unconfiscatable. I mean, that's where Unconfiscatable is where we first met you in the flesh. I remember being a bit intimidated by you at first because I was like, damn, this guy's running shit right now. He is not taking anyone's bullshit. We ran a tight ship. That was our first Bitcoin conference. That was what, like February 2021 now? Does that sound right?
It was
2022
last year, right?
Was it only last year? Or yeah, shit. It was 2022.
Yeah, it was our third one. Yeah, and that was the first that I had heard of the crypto couple. That was really cool. That was a Tone Discovery. He's like, hey, they're gonna host the Scammies, and they're super funny. And I was like, I never heard of them. And you guys not only are all of those things, you are actually lovely people. So,
which is always a nice surprise, right? I still remember the first time Tone hit us up, and we obviously knew who Tone was. And we're like, oh, damn, Tone Vase is wanting us to come and do something called the Scammy Awards. And then, we get on a Google Meet or whatever with him. And he's like, hey, so basically love what you guys are doing. And I think it would be great if you hosted the Scammy Awards. And my Tone impression is a little bit rusty, though. I got to work on it.
It's actually great. It's actually probably one of the best. In fact, that would be a good side event to have at a conference is your best Tone Vase impersonation.
It's just me giving advice in Tone's voice, but I'm giving really bad advice, like not not quality tone advice. I think we might have something there. We might have a little niche.
I love it. I think that you might even be reigning champion. You're certainly going to be in the finale, in the top few.
Well, I would hope so. But I'm glad that we got a chance to do this, because
you could also say that was your big break.
Honestly, Tone Vase was our big break. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't Michael Saylor retweeting you. It was that scammy awards show,
The best thing about Unconfiscatable, though, was one room for everything. So you don't miss anything. It's not, oh, do I go between these two stages? It's like, no, everything's in here. Just chill in this room. The booze was flowing. That helped. Vegas, baby. But also, because it was so much more intimate, I think maybe it was like 500 people somewhere, maybe a little more. Does that sound right?
No, less. It's usually between 300 and 400. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was amazing, because that's where we literally met all these people who have now, like yourself, who have now become, good friends, and doing it that's the only kind of conference where you could have that level of personal experience with people, I think, because it's just people hanging out, listening to great talks, and getting into some shenanigans. I lost very quickly in that poker tournament, though. That I had no business sitting at the table, and turns out Tone was sitting next to me. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, I'm so fucked. It's over before it had even begun.
Cool, but dude, man. Well, it's your Bitcoin fam.
And now here we are. I wish there wasn't so much distance separating us. However, I will still drink to closing that distance at some point in the near future. We will have another Bitcoiner in tow, though, with our little man coming soon. So
you got it. You got to find that first block, buddy. You got to mine that first block, and you're on your way.
Oh yeah. I think I'm debating, man, do I set this kid up with a Nostr, Npub, and NSEC right from the start? Just get it out there, so it's maybe back, you look 15 years in the future, he's like, oh, don't worry, son, you don't need to set up your own Nostr. I've been saving you a pair of keys that are ancient now, and they're ready for you. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that would go right along. I mean, you're naming the child ASIC, right?
Yeah.
ASIC?
Yep, exactly. ASIC Block Clock is going to be his middle name. Oh man, it's going to be a wild ride. The crazy thing is there's a lot of pregnant Bitcoiners right now, which is cool. Bitcoin baby number go up. I think that's a good thing. Knock them out.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm right there behind you. All right. And maybe they can all play in the kids area of the country that Bitcoiners will start together.
Do you think before too long, it's just Bitcoiners end up just establishing one state where they're okay, all of us autists did the appropriate research. We determined this was the optimal state for all these reasons. Now we've overtaken all of the legislative assemblies in the state and have made it much more libertarian. And now we are just expanding a citadel on a state by state basis. Or are Bitcoiners too, perhaps too much of individualists for that? I don't know.
Well, maybe they won't have to do that if one of these sort of territories and countries makes it kind of Bitcoin friendly, like maybe Madeira or even El Salvador, which it's still not really super easy to get an El Salvador passport or to do that process. It's easy to get residency. There's a lot of restrictions on how many days you have to be in El Salvador and some other things. But if a country was straight up, sign a message in your wallet that has 3 Bitcoins in it, we're going to give you a passport, come here, I'd probably get a lot of wealthy UTXOs up in there.
Honestly, I still have yet to make it to Madeira, but I look forward to going there because, man, that looks like just a little slice of heaven.
Well, clearly,
incredible climate,
Clearly, you're going to be packing up Carla and the newborn and flying out to a small island in March, right?
Oh man, I think it's going to be too soon. We were honestly, we were debated it for a second, and then we're you know what, that's going to be a very, very small baby to be going on planes, trains, and automobiles with. But there will come another time. But again, we'll have to send our love from afar for a little bit.
Absolutely.
From the cold northern climates here, we won't get any of that delightful sun and sea air for a while.
Yeah, what happened now? You're in the cold north. I thought you guys were desert rats. I thought you were going to Nevada and that was going to be the place. I pictured you with like a mullet going to like the QT filling station to get like a 64 ounce like Pepsi and just I thought you were going to embrace it, man.
I'm just kind of a little bit offended that you'd peg me as a Pepsi guy. I don't know that for some, the mullet is not at all offensive. That's pretty par for the course. Like my hair is short right now, but we were out there. We were planning on moving there after spending like 5 months or so there. We're going to move full time. And then Carla was pregnant. And so we were like, maybe better to move back to the Midwest. We've got family here, be a little closer to both sets of grandparents while the kid is young, and also be closer to a couple sets of hands to assist us. That was another big determining factor. So closer to grandmas and grandpas. I got to say, I do miss that Vegas sunshine. It's just nice. It's cold here in the North Woods now. But hey, what can you do, right?
Yeah. Well, you got family and you got other things there.
Yeah. But hey, I can't complain, What a beautiful time to be alive. What a beautiful time to be able to spend an afternoon chatting with a friend about Bitcoin and about Bitcoin venture capital. So if you're good with it, let's dive into this bad boy. I've got some questions for you, but we'll keep it loose. We'll keep it fuzzy muzzy, if that's an expression, and we'll just go with it. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I've been rolling this whole time also, so I'll cut out anything incriminating, but all about that pre-roll now. The preamble is what makes it,
Yeah, I have a suspicion that there's some good stuff that comes out early before you hit the button.
A little, yeah, and I'm just stoked to have you here, man. So let's just fucking dive in. So greetings and salutations to all of my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. I am joined today for a Bitcoin Talk episode by Mike Jarmuz, and I still always struggle. I'm saying Jarmuz correctly, right? Or Jarmuz. Yeah. I'm never entirely sure.
Yeah, well, I'm never entirely sure, actually. And, I went through my whole life as Jarmuz. I was the Muzz man. My friends called me Muzz. I've been Muzz my whole life. And I used to drive a yellow taxi in New York City for a brief hot minute. And I was getting the keys to this yellow cab, and this crazy dude, he was 300 feet tall, bald. He was screaming at me, and he screams, Jarmuz. And I'm like, it's Jarmuz. And he's like, I'm from Poland. You don't even know how to say your fucking last name. It's Jarmuz, cab 48. And throws the keys at me or whatever. But so then it's like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? I'm going to change my name now? I'm going to say it a whole different way?
Man, that's an identity crisis if I've ever heard one. But you are also, it's always easier to call you Muzz or the Muzz man. It just rolls off the tongue well. It feels velvety. But you are a co-founder and a managing partner at Lightning Ventures. And today we are going to just dive in to the world of Bitcoin VCs. I think it's something that people are starting to pay more attention to, even those who may not be VCs themselves. But there's a lot of Bitcoin businesses popping up all over. If you're, on Twitter, you're on Nostr, you're seeing this stuff really start to take off. You're seeing a lot more chatter about it now that price is moving upwards of Bitcoin, I suppose, so it goes. But throughout this whole bear market, VCs like Lightning Ventures, like some others, have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes with these companies, both bringing them capital, but also coaching them, trying to get them ready for this coming wave of adoption that I think we all know is right on the cusp, heading right down the pipeline. So I want to start out by going back to the beginning. So you mentioned you drove a taxi, but I want to know who is the Muzz man, who is Mike Jarmuz. However, I'm still going to keep messing this up. And how the fuck did you get here today, man?
Wow. Okay. So, geez, good
I
Lord.
know.
So I was born in Arizona. I'm from Phoenix, so not too far from you, the desert rat, being out there. And I was really passionate my whole life about the music business in every possible way. So I was a concert promoter and had a record label in high school and putting out some friends. There were these little discs, okay? They were called CDs, CD-ROMs. And releasing friends' records on a record label as a kid, and eventually started promoting concerts. We were one of the largest independent concert promoters in the Southwest. We did 35 concerts a month in Phoenix, Tucson, and Albuquerque, from say 50 people up to, I believe our largest show was like 5,000 people. So a lot of bands, artist development. It's kind of similar to venture and early stage investing, because when you invest in a company early and you maintain a good relationship with them, you can invest again later. And that's kind of how it is in music in terms of a concert promoter, right? You establish a relationship when there's 50 people and you maintain that relationship all the way as far as you can before, someone takes them. So there's a lot of parallels there with that. So I also tour managed bands. I traveled around the country and some parts of the world in everything from a van and trailer with hotel rooms every night to an RV to a tour bus, something similar to like an Almost Famous kind of deal. Nobody actually drove the bus through a chain link fence or anything like that, but pretty much lived that for a long time. I was a tour manager and I also did lights. I can do sound. But did that. I also lived above and ran a famous punk rock venue called the Nile Theater in Mesa, Arizona. That was also a crazy experience. Had a art gallery in downtown Phoenix where we did shows as well, and did a whole bunch of things. And I had a retail store in Tempe, Arizona, which was also a concert ticket outlet. It was kind of like a Hot Topic. We sold belt buckles and Weezer cell phone covers and crap like that. So did a lot of different things in life, and then I managed a band that got signed to Elektra Records. That was before the Warner Elektra merger. So that was like $1 million deal. We were all in our very early 20s. We all bought some houses, had a great time. And that was the real tail end before the music industry really fully changed digitally. So that was a great experience, going out to New York and them making their record, which was an awesome record. Unfortunately, it didn't do that great, but the band toured. And just like us Bitcoiners, when you put in the real work, okay, the real work might not be what gets you there, right? You're grinding it out on YouTube. You're grinding out this new podcast, right? You put in the real work and then it happens. And the bands that do that too, and the companies, I guess, or really anyone, that's when you are sustainable. So even though, according to the record label, it wasn't a huge success, the band could still sell out theaters across the country, right? 1,500 cap rooms or so, and have a very successful career. So I managed them for a while. And then after that, I put everything I owned in storage, and I went and lived on a Mississippi plantation farm, and I wrote 200 pages about being in the South. I went to a place called the Crossroads, which is a mystical place where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at this place to become the greatest blues guitarist of all time. If you know about the Crossroads, it's about an hour south of Memphis or so. And I lived on a place called the Shack Up Inn. It was a B&B, which stood for bed and beer. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. And I ran the place, and there were these authentic sharecropper shacks that they brought in on this old plantation farm, and they rented it out to people, and it was a ball. And I wrote a bunch about that, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to move to New York City and start a real life and start over. So that's what I did, and that's when I started doing a whole bunch of other things. And I know I've been talking, so I'm going to be quiet. But
keep it rolling, man.
In that process, after the New York chapter started, which is where I briefly drove a yellow cab in the city, I'll never forget that. That's where I really discovered private markets and investing in companies that were not traded. I've been interested in finance and stocks and all of those things my whole life, certainly very entrepreneurial. I had a ton of businesses. I had a bar in New York City. We had the second Bitcoin ATM. I had a cafe there too. Thank God we sold it. And, post COVID, we sold it. Thank God. So love business, love all that. And I was convinced that investing in companies before they went private was really where everyone made money. And that's true. That's pretty much how it works. So I didn't want to lose all my money. So I started investing in later stage secondary deals. So these companies before they went public, like Uber or Airbnb or Robinhood or Wish.com. And by the way, they don't all go great, but you won't get a zero. You know what I mean? You can, of course, BlockFi, FTX. I mean, things do go. WeWork, maybe now they filed for bankruptcy. Things do go to badness, but you don't keep your money tied up for too long, and you're lucky to maybe get 2 to 10x your money, right? And if you put $10,000 into DraftKings, for example, DraftKings was one of my exits, and then 16 months later, you get to 4x out of it, right? You put in 10 grand, you get back 40. I'll do that all day. So, and I also wasn't like really investing in dangerous early stage things. It was good building up that. And then through that process, because you can tell clearly that I'm, a Columbia MBA. I mean, that just oozes out. Becoming
Are you?
Yes, of course. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I was like, damn, I can never tell if you're entirely kidding. I mean, it's a good thing. You keep me on the edge of my seat here, but you had me going with that for a little while.
Are you kidding me? Come on, look at me. I don't know what college would take me. But
I never judge a book by its cover.
Well, that's how you're going to judge a book then, damn it.
By reading the damn thing.
That takes forever, man. I want to see a good cover on a book.
Maybe I'll just watch the movie version,
So then I started just really becoming obsessed with learning about angel investing because, oh my God, well, look at what there is to learn. And that never stops. So becoming obsessed with that. And I met somebody actually coincidentally at one of Tone's events. It was a financial summit. And I was showing him what I was doing and some of my exits. And he said, if you really want to do this, you got to do the early stage stuff. This is great, but you really have to do it. And it was like, well, I don't want to lose all my money. And it's like, well, continue with the education and invest small amounts of money. And he really dialed me up, got me into deal flow, we call it, right? From some of the best people that I respect a ton. And when they're sending you deals, right, just like how we send deals in Lightning Ventures, that some work has went into it, right? There's a due diligence process. There's a process that we're going through. We're looking at things that we specialize in. Okay, we don't have a deal for clothes that block, waves in your house, or drugs that make your dog live longer. Okay, I wouldn't feel comfortable sending Walker a deal for a new hip replacement therapy. Okay, because that's not really what I know. So I started investing small checks into these companies, everything you can imagine, flying cars and robotic groceries and all of these kind of things, small checks, reading the updates from the founders, learning as much as I could through that process and continually learning. And occasionally there were some Bitcoin deals. I was a Bitcoin long before this point, but there wasn't like a ton. Right. So maybe Fold. I got the deal for Fold sent to me. Kraken doesn't count. Right. But I picked up some Kraken shares on a secondary earlier. Or, there weren't that many, put it that way. Or Swan Bitcoin, for example, there were a few, but there wasn't a ton. And invested psychotically into way too many of these things. And then some good friends of mine basically motivated me and said, hey, why don't you start your own shop, right? And I'm really passionate about providing these investments to people, right? To getting the light bulb going off on this is an asset class and how much money you can make when it goes right with angel investing and early stage tech investing as a whole, and how that compares to Bitcoin and can complement your portfolio. And even without just investing in Bitcoin startups, which is all that I think about and deal with. Investing, period, in a lot of these companies. Where else do you get, 100 to a 4,000x return? That's not a useless token or some type of thing like that, right? Like these are real equities and real deals, and making sure that there's some education, keeping the minimums low and getting people started, right? So that's the syndicate part of Lightning Ventures. And we raised a very small friends and family fund that is now almost deployed. That's no fees, no carry, right? I'm running it for free. And that was a great pilot fund to kind of get started on that side of things, as well as building out the syndicate, which I love. And that's pretty much where we're at now. Is on a deal by deal basis. You can invest in startups for as little as $1,000. You can be impactful. You can read the updates from the founders. You could maybe find sponsors, right? Like, I can't wait. Somebody today, I don't want to say the name. Somebody today was like, hey, we want, we're trying to like go live. And it's like, hey, well, how about some sponsorships on podcasts that maybe aren't owned, right? Maybe it's not the Swan Bitcoin crew, or it's not, the Unchained crew, but maybe there's we call it Moneyball, right? If you ever saw the Brad Pitt movie, it's a baseball movie where you're trying to spend the perfect amount of money on the best player that's underrated, right? So if you wanted to spend some money in the podcast space, maybe you would throw a little money at something like this, right? Which I'm sure you could use it. So that's why it's great having awesome people in the syndicate, is because when we send out an email being like, can anyone help with that? And maybe someone had invested in that deal, they can say, yeah, I know someone, or yeah, I'll hop on the phone with them, And that's really what it's all about. It's not just about cutting a check and saying adios. It's about being as proactive as you can be with what resources you have and what's available. So I really try to do that. That's what we're all about, as much as we can in our capacity.
Man, that was a righteous intro. I loved it. And yeah, hey, I'm always open to sponsorships for another fucking Bitcoin podcast. So I think for a lot of people, the world of VC funding is completely opaque. Maybe, until I started talking with you, I really had no idea. I still kind of have no idea, but I'm starting to. But I think for a lot of people, it's just this other area. And when you hear VCs, you think of the Silicon Valley vest wearing, tight European soccer player haircut type people. And it just seems like it's this big money pumping scheme into this, and I'm speaking Silicon Valley style, not, let's say Bitcoin startups, but pumping a lot of money into vaporware, driving up the price in various rounds and taking a sweet exit. And then kind of, what comes of it. Obviously there are some that are incredibly useful and also genuinely profitable companies, but there's a lot of junk out there, right? And a lot of that is driven by the fact that there has been so much money just soaking in the system for so long that people are like, okay, I need more and more speculative investments to just try and stay above of the rampant inflation that we have. And I want to get into that a little bit, into the kind of the differences between what you guys are doing and what funds like Ego Death are doing versus the kind of traditional VC route. But first, I kind of want to set a baseline. So maybe if you can just walk through a little bit, what is your investment thesis at Lightning Ventures? What are you guys looking for in companies? What are you out there scouting for? And, what excites you guys as investors?
Okay, well, first, I'd love to talk about, traditional VC versus Bitcoin VC and,
then let's start there.
The stigma that VCs have.
Start with it. There's no rules here, Muzz.
There's no rules?
No rules.
Just like everything, though, they get a bad name, right? Just like lawyers get a bad name and insurance people get a bad name. There's very good insurance people out there, right? That are really cool to deal with. There's used car salesmen who are actually lovely people and great fathers, and aren't pushy. But as a whole, you kind of have that reputation as Jimmy Song likes to say rent seeking, they don't add any value. They're just useless. And there is that. There are funds that perform terribly, and a lot of times they don't get to perform again because there's a scorecard at the end of it that we all kind of have to live by. And a lot of these Bitcoin funds that maybe started deploying around the same time, we're all going to have to look back when the dust settles on how we did and what we did, because we're in an industry where not everything is safe with an underlying asset that's secured, like real estate, right? If you and I bought a 4-unit apartment complex, like we have the land, we have the building. I mean, you and I can screw up all sorts of things, but there's like something there. It's not going to go to zero, and in the startup world, it's a whole different story where many things do. And the ones that don't are so big of outsized returns that it makes up for it. And, VCs are in need, they're necessary, especially good ones, even good angel investors, somebody that can be there for you, whether it's an emotional support animal that's just there to listen, or for, vision shaping, or, talking strategy or intros, or, whatever the lowest hanging fruit is, whatever the biggest problem that you're trying to solve, they are your team. They are on your side. They are not meant to give you friction and resistance and make you have all sorts of governance and control. They are there to literally support you. So I think the biggest mistake that founders make is they don't utilize their VCs and their cap table, right? If you have 10 people who've invested in your company, and maybe there's 2 VCs and a couple of angels and Aunt Betty and whatever you have on there, and you're looking to raise your margins, okay? Reaching out to them and talking about how maybe a better deal on your credit card processing, or warehouse fulfillment, or a better node management tool, or whatever you're doing, right? There's just a lot of ways to leverage them, and the founders that do leverage them, I think that they do the best. So we're not evil people, especially at our level, right? I mean, we're not taking board seats, and we're not at that level. And later on, it's a whole nother story. So we're not all bad, I promise you. And the people who are really good, man, they make a lot of money. And, investing $100,000 into someone's venture fund, and over the next 10 years being paid $3 million is pretty cool. That they're able to do that on a consistent basis, right? Or have vintage years that obviously do better, right? 2013 was a great year. You have these waves of the DoorDashes and Coinbase and all these kind of things that come out of the Instacarts or whatever from that very early stage. And then you have periods where there wasn't a lot, like right now. It's kind of another year. And maybe if you invested towards the top, that fund won't do quite as well as some of the funds that are about to be investing now. So, we're not all bad.
Well, I like that. I appreciate the context there, because I think it is often lost on many that, companies need money. They need capital to be able to function. If you are a capitalist, as I believe anyone who has gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole likely is, then you should be encouraging the effective deployment of that capital. Now, one could make the argument that maybe, VCs don't always deploy that capital correctly, but it's their fucking money, right? Well, or their money and others' money, but you need capital to be able to scale businesses. And this is why I really wanted to talk to you, because I think at this time right now, it's such an important thing to have VCs that are specifically focused on helping Bitcoin businesses scale, because there's a lot of malinvestment out there in the world. This is not something new. This is, it will probably always be the case. But Bitcoin businesses and ones that are actually trying to build on top of Bitcoin, build on top of Lightning, these are ones that actually have a chance at being not just good investments for the investors, but good companies that do well by their customers and hopefully make a really positive impact on the world. Like, these are companies that help drive Bitcoin adoption. And so I think it's so important to highlight those companies, to have investors who are focused and saying, we're just going to look at companies that are Bitcoin only. We're not going to look at any of this crypto shit. We don't care if you're building a blockchain with a new token. Like, it's Bitcoin or it's nothing. And so that's probably a good kind of transition into, what do you guys look for in your in companies that you end up, rolling forward with? What's your thesis? How do you make those decisions? Where are the lines in the sand for you guys?
Well, first off, because, I'm impossible to work with and I'll go through partners like, nobody's business. I am kind of able to make those decisions myself. And I hope that one day, like my report card, it'll be able to say does work well with others. So some people in their theses, they're very specific. Like, for example, Ego Death does no mining. Okay. So that's just not for them. All right. For firms like 1031 have done much mining. Okay. So some really focus on infrastructure. Maybe one doesn't do games, just no matter what. It could be the greatest game that there's out there and has something to do with Bitcoin, but we don't want anything to do with it, right? I don't have a lot of those rules. It's all things Bitcoin, but some rules are no stacks projects. Okay. That's a rule. And, nothing that, nothing shitcoinery, right? So like even something like, for example, like let's just say that there was an exchange in another part of the world and they were selling other things. That at this point in time is not something that we would risk a reputational risk from rolling out in Lightning Ventures, right? And that kills a lot of things, So, there's no movies, okay? No movies. That is one hard no. Is anyone who's looking to raise funds for their movie, that is not something that we can do. Go to Geyser. Maybe other people invest in movies or plays or things like that. So that's a no. And then there's something called an uncapped note, which is a certain type of financing terms. And that is a hard no. Anyone who is raising on an uncapped note is something that I wouldn't be interested in. But that leaves pretty much everything else, right? That's something like Thunder Games, or even something like Crowd Health, right? Which was a healthcare company with a large Bitcoin component, something like Ibex with infrastructure, or Strike, or, Amber in Australia, or Coin Corner in the UK. Those type of companies, Osmo down in 5 Central America companies, those type of companies are all in play, right? Something like Relay, which didn't have Lightning when we first invested, right? Everyone thinks like, oh, you just invest in Lightning stuff. I get that a lot.
Could it be the name? I'm just wondering.
We didn't think about it. We didn't think about it early on. But something like Relay didn't have Lightning and now has added it. Right. Same thing with Amber in Australia. They're going to be adding it. Right. Swan is testing it right now. So Lightning's kind of where everything's going. That's certainly a focus, but that's not like a deal breaker. So as far as the stage goes, personally, I like to invest after there is some sort of traction, some sort of measurable traction. Right. Even if it's just a few weeks or a couple of months, just something. The investments that we've made in the very early pre-product stages, pre-revenue stages, those are the hardest ones. They're probably the ones right now that are having the toughest time. They still had very successful rounds. There's a lot of very more prominent big name VCs that invested a heck of a lot more money than we did in those deals. I wouldn't say that we missaw it, but they're having the hardest time, launching. And then the products where they have a live product and the KPIs are going up. I mean, if you had 40 customers a week ago and you have 65 this week, you might not think that's great, but once you start putting that on a chart, it starts looking incredible. And those are the type of things, right? Getting somewhere with as little funding as possible, actually executing, is very important.
Question for you. How long has it been since you tried a new hardware wallet? Or maybe you've never had one and want to try one for the first time, or need to get some Christmas presents for friends and family. Either way, head to bitbox.swiss/walker and use promo code walker for 5% off the Bitcoin only Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. It is super easy to use. It's Bitcoin only and it's fully open source. So you can check out the firmware, check out the app, even x-rays of the hardware and other schematics if you are so inclined. Just go to their GitHub and verify it for yourself. You don't have to trust me. Hell, go ahead and build one for yourself if you feel like it. Or do what I did. Go to bitbox.swiss/walker and use promo code walker for 5% off. The choice is yours. Yeah, actually getting something done. That's it's always a good place to start. You mentioned just in terms of Lightning companies and listed off a few that are currently implementing Lightning or have implemented. We also have seen lately maybe not just lately, but consistently a lot of Lightning FUD, let's say, and maybe it's not FUD, some would argue. Maybe it's the reality of the limitations of Lightning. What are your thoughts on that, just in terms of a lot of people go back and forth between, okay, yeah, Lightning works, but only when you're running it in a more custodial sense and you have, big nodes with, massive channel capacity, and it's really only going to be something that is working, well in a custodial sense. And otherwise it's just, it's just like LARPing. Like what's your take on that? Being in the chair that you're in, seeing these companies who are actively building on this right now.
I mean, Lightning's working fine for me. How's it working for you?
It's working fine for me.
So I really don't know what everyone's up in a tizzy about. Honestly, like, there's only so much time in the day, right? And what I can focus on is really not that. I just don't really see any issues. Maybe some regulation, right? I mean, Wallet of Satoshi leaving.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a payment fail in, I don't even remember the last time. And there's just, I can't see any of these negative arguments. People want to talk about, non-custodial, is the key and is the way. And, I was at a conference one time and this lady, right, we were like in Asia. Okay, we were like getting ready to download her first wallet, and it was like, Wallet of Satoshi, real quick, back it up. Here's the 2 words. Boom, I sent her $5. And this guy next to me, like after she left, from what I thought was a pleasant interaction, this guy is like reading me the riot act of like, you should have got her on Phoenix. What is wrong with you? Your bad practices. And it's like, dude, she's like 50. All right, I'm going to like terrify her right now. It's like, you're going to save these words. Don't, take a picture of it with my, no, don't do that. Don't do that. What if I lose the words? You say it's non-custodial, but non-custodial means I actually, yes. Just trust me. Just like, how are we going to possibly go through that?
Well, it's something I definitely agree with, because especially when it comes to, let's say, in-person interactions that you have a limited amount of time to show somebody a little bit of the magic of Bitcoin. When you have 2 to 5 minutes, are you really going to go through all of the aspects of self-custody, right, and explain hardware wallets and explain best practices for storing that seed phrase and explain that, listen, by the way, I want to send you a test transaction. You'll see it. You'll know that it's real once there's been 6 block confirmations. Why 6? Well, because that's when we know the amount of. Well, you just take my word for it. It's 6. But most of the time, when you want to show somebody the magic of Bitcoin and you only have a few minutes, you're going to show them Lightning. And the easiest way to do that right now is with custodial solutions. Phoenix Wallet's doing some great stuff, right? But it's still easier to show somebody on a custodial solution right now. Now, it's also the fact that you can still, during that conversation, say, by the way, what I'm showing you right now is what we call a custodial wallet. You don't really need to worry about what that means, but what it means for you is that if you're going to start learning more about Bitcoin and start saving more of your money in Bitcoin, once you reach a certain amount that you feel like is a good amount of money, you should move that into a self-custody solution. And you can look that up. And by the way, here's my Telegram, here's my WhatsApp, here's my Signal. Hit me up and I'm happy to answer any questions. Or go on BTC Sessions YouTube and literally all of your questions will be answered. Like, those quick interactions can be really, really positive for people if they just see that it works, and it works right away. And the most reliable way to do that with Lightning is in a custodial way, especially when you only have 2 to 5 minutes. So I agree that self-custody is incredibly important. That's how you can actually achieve a degree of sovereignty, and sovereignty is a big spectrum, right? But we also have to be practical about showing people things that are going to have some wow factor right away, and then encouraging them to do more research, right? Because you can't teach somebody everything that you've learned through thousands of hours of studying Bitcoin in a 2-minute conversation. It's just not going to happen, and you'll drive yourself crazy. But that's a fair answer to my initial question about the Lightning FUD. So let's switch gears a little bit, because perhaps we have some entrepreneurs out there who want to build on Bitcoin. Maybe they're already working on something. Maybe they're working by themselves right now. And you know what? They would love to bring on some more people. They would love to turn this into a business, turn this passion project into a business. What advice do you have for early stage entrepreneurs? Maybe they just have an idea. Maybe they have some code written. Maybe they've got a product that's, almost ready to go. What advice do you have for them as far as when should they start looking and, talking to VCs? Maybe also, what questions should they expect from VCs, and what questions should they themselves ask to those VCs to make sure they've got a good partner in this journey?
Man, that's a whole lot of questions there.
I know. I like to load them up though, because I know that you flow with it.
So I have a presentation called Founders and Funding where we chat about some of those things.
It's a great presentation.
No, you saw the other one. You didn't see this one.
Oh, well, damn it. Now I feel left out.
But yeah, so what do you do, right? The first thing is you're working on your project, okay? And you're maybe finding somebody to help you, all right? And that's what cannot be copied, okay? Your passion, okay, and executing, you do not need to patent. That is for you, okay? The ideas are cheap. The idea is nothing. Nobody is going to steal your idea, right? In nearly every case, all right? You have to build it. And I think when you get to a point where you need a certain amount of money to get to a next level, to do something, whatever that is. Maybe it's hire your first engineer. Maybe it's a liquidity thing. Maybe it's a user acquisition campaign, some advertising, whatever you're doing. You need that money. That is when you should really start preparing to raise it in a serious manner. Best practices, have a data room. Incorporate properly. Create an options pool for the future. A Delaware C is the weapon of choice. Don't reinvent the wheel and think my neighbor's attorney says a Wyoming LLC is going to be don't. It's a Delaware C, and doing it properly. having those docs in a drive, having your wire instructions. Why do I need to put my wire instructions in a drive after you've opened a bank account? You will need them, and you look really smart when you can send that one link to a VC and it has everything in there. Maybe it has a short executive summary. Maybe it has whatever you're working on with a pitch deck that's in there, or some bios of people that are on the team. Maybe a very small cap table, even though no one's on it yet. Maybe you have something in there. Have all these things and be incorporated properly before you reach out to any VC. And you can start that process from the beginning, but why would you ever detract from building to like do these other things? If you have the capacity for it, if it is, but certainly do those things before you reach out to any VCs about getting funding. And then maybe you get to a point where you have an MVP or you have something, all right, and you want to raise $400,000, okay? And then at that point, you really need to think about what that $400,000 is going to do. Is that going to get you your first 3,000 downloads? Is it going to get you your first 500 customers? What will it do, right? And how will you spend it? Okay, and really try to get into some kind of forecast. See what happened before coming out of a hot market is you could just raise to extend the runway. Oh, well, we'll just kick out another safe note and raise another 2 or 3 million. And yeah, that'll extend it 18 months or however many months. And then eventually when the money's not there, you have to like build a real business. So it's cool now because all of these entrepreneurs are coming into this world. You can only build a real business. Maybe in crypto land, you can still build a fake business. I don't know. Maybe there's still fake things getting funded. I'm not an expert over there in that world. But in Bitcoin land, you have to be a real business. So, there's so many tips here. Don't send a 50-page deck. Don't send a generic email that's like, 3 pages of a block of text. You know what I mean? Just like a short 1 paragraph. What do you do and why should they care? I mean, that's ultimately what matters. If you can get across what we're doing and why you should care, you'll probably get a good response. The double opt-ins. If you know somebody who knows that person, having them do an intro, it works wonders. You're so much more likely. And then the double intro from 2 people that know that person, both saying, hey, have you checked out so-and-so and his project? It's a great thing to do, right? A lot of people, they go online, they buy a list of like 10,000 people. And it's like, dear investor, my name is Walker and this is my podcast. And no, I'm just kidding.
I'm not looking for investment in this bad boy, but I'll keep that in mind if I do.
We're not going to run the Bitcoin. We're not gonna have an allocation for this next week.
Well, I mean, I know you don't do movies. Do you do podcasts? Is that an investable entity? I suppose anything is, but
I think Joe Rogan's was acquired for like a whole lot of money.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think I'm. I think I'm just like a couple orders of magnitude below that. Actually, many orders of magnitude.
You're grinding it out, dog.
I appreciate the comparison nonetheless.
You're grinding it out.
I got a little too much
hair. Yeah. Maybe one day. But no, podcasts are not really investable for what we're doing. But there are a lot of good investments that are not necessarily suited for venture. And that's important to know. It's important to know that let's just say, and I don't want to get any shit for it, but let's just say that metal seed plates, okay? Things that are like super necessary that we all love as Bitcoiners, these indestructible, that Jameson Lopp blog post where he blows it up with nitrogen or something. He's like, B-, I lost 1 word or whatever it was, those type of things are great. Like they're necessary tools. They're not like venture investments. You know what I mean? They're not the type of things that we'd invest in. It's like a hardware, pretty niche thing, right? So like there are things that like need to exist and are probably still great investments. Like that founder, those teams that are making any like seed plates, they could probably run a very profitable business and pay dividends and have a set of investors with different expectations who are focused on different things and still raise money. It's not that it's not investable. It's just you're in a field in venture where you're trying to return the fund. That's what they call it, return the fund, which is when just one investment in your portfolio returns the entire investment. Okay. So if you make $100,000 investment into a company and your fund size is 10 million, a lot of people's theses will be to only invest in things that could potentially return that entire $10 million at least once over. And that might not be obscure node management software. Okay. That doesn't mean that it's not it's a waste of time and you shouldn't do this or whatever. And if anything, it might be able to help that team think about how do we make this more commercial? How do we make this make more money? Or how do we, how do we change it a bit? So there's just a lot of great things to invest in, but they might not all be one size fits all.
No, that's I think that's pretty good advice. You got to know yourself, right, and know what kind of lane you're actually going to be operating in. I'm curious if you see just in terms of general trends. So, if we're talking about fiat price of Bitcoin, things are heating up, right? We got a halving around the corner. I know you guys are likely not, you're not basing your investments on, oh, is this going to blow up during the halving and then, we'll forget about it afterwards. You're thinking more long-term. But I'm curious in terms of, let's say, more generalist VCs, if that's the correct term, do you see more of them, more appetite from those traditional or generalist VCs moving in and trying to get some allocations to Bitcoin only companies? Are you seeing that landscape shifting at all, or what's it look like for you?
Definitely a lot of renewed excitement. Granted, some of that, maybe pretty decent amount of that is really due to ordinals and these other types of things, right? Love them or hate them. And there's so many, right? There's, RGB and ordinals and stacks, right? And I know which ones I hate, but I'm just mean as a whole, all right? As a whole, it drives and brings a narrative back to Bitcoin. And that's the number one thing that I'm getting from crypto VCs, right? Is along the lines of, we weren't looking at Bitcoin and now the narrative has changed. Now we're paying close attention to BRC20 tokens and these type of things. And that's bringing them in. And the only hope is that they come in and realize like there's so much more. There's so much more than locking up your NFTs, locking up your ordinals and borrowing against it. I can tell you right now, that is something that like have 0% interest in and want nothing to do with. And it may even be a good investment. I don't know. They close, like these type of things are closing oversubscribed venture rounds of not the Bitcoin VCs that we all know and love, but another group of people, right? Or the Taproot Wizards. What was their tagline? It said something like, we're going to make Bitcoin something again, or
I believe it was fun again.
Make Bitcoin fun again. I
so.
didn't get that pitch deck, and I don't think they would dare ever approach Lightning Ventures. So I didn't know. I just read the press release, but like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And the crypto VCs are certainly more focused on Bitcoin. I even get we were solely focused on Bitcoin, and now we're looking to really solely be focused on Bitcoin. So there's a big shift in that. And the traditional VCs, the fintech VCs, they're all kind of coming around. But it's still not like a main focus. You see their name on some deals. They're starting to participate. They're starting to talk to companies more. But we have a long way to go because you can pretty much name the Bitcoin VCs on maybe two hands at the most.
No, that's interesting. And I know I'm curious then, given that perspective, that there is less attention being paid to Bitcoin focused, Bitcoin only startups than is due to it. I mean, much like Bitcoin itself, right? still the vast majority of people, even if they've heard of Bitcoin, don't think about it nearly as often as folks like we do, right? And probably don't own any. High 90% of the world has no exposure to Bitcoin. So we're still early. And it sounds like we're still very early in terms of the Bitcoin VC space. And I'm curious, with that, do you think that a lot of these Bitcoin companies are they undervalued, or are they just fairly valued? Because maybe Bitcoin VCs take the concept of money and funding a little more seriously than the traditional ones. What's your take on just valuations that you're seeing in general? What's the appetite for the rounds that you guys are participating in? And has that been shifting over, the last 6 months?
Well, I think it's actually quite the opposite. I think that traditional VCs definitely more fairly value, negotiate, and are much shrewder with investing than the Bitcoin VCs and in Bitcoin land in general. And I don't want to get in trouble or say the wrong thing. But if you looked at, think about this, all right? If I've invested in over 2,000 deals, think about how many deals I didn't invest in. Think about how many that I saw, okay? And when you see a company that has 800K in ARR and it's up 5X from last year, and they're raising at, a 16 million post-money valuation, and they have quality co-investors, okay? And it's like a wallet in Africa that does a payment or something, whatever it is, okay? And then you come to Bitcoin land and it's yeah, we've got 1,800 in revenue, but it's sats, man. And we're thinking 21 post-million valuation, no discount. We like the number 21, man. All right, and it's just whoa, hold on a second here. Take a knee, and I'm like old man yells at startup valuation. That's me, and that's fine. But there are some others, right? That also we talk us Bitcoin VCs, and we're like, yo, that guy is high, or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, in Maybe. Bitcoin land, in Bitcoin land, it's a little different than traditional venture. If they actually went to a real VC and they told them what they were trying to do, I think the VC would just politely say, we can't really justify this at that valuation, pretty much most of the time. And in the Bitcoin land, there's a lot of real companies. There's a lot of profitable companies. A lot of our companies are having record months now when the price is terrible. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen in a bull market. Okay, every on-ramp, off-ramp, exchanges, the sats back type of companies, the Bitcoin company, the gift card companies, everything that you can imagine, many of them are having absolute record quarters, record months. We're getting the updates. They batten down the hatches through SVB and FTX and Celsius and everything that just happened. Batten down the hatches, made it through this time. And on the other side, my Lord, I can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Well, it's interesting too, because, maybe some of these companies, especially ones that have Bitcoin treasuries, are more fairly valued than one might think. Even if we're saying, okay, a lot, maybe there's a lot of exuberance in general about these companies, right? And Bitcoiners love seeing other Bitcoiners building stuff and maybe get overly exuberant. And, the Bitcoiners themselves are we're worth this much. But for companies that have Bitcoin treasuries, which I think is a lot, is it fair to say it's most of the companies you guys are investing in, or what's kind of the percentage there? I'm curious, but they're going to see a massive appreciation in the value of their cash on hand when Bitcoin starts doing its thing in fiat terms.
So I love that. It's one of my favorite concepts to smoke a joint and think about in my private life. But if your revenue is in sats, right, and you're looking back in the past 4, 5, 6 months, okay, in your Excel spreadsheet, okay, your US dollar revenue in sats for those months is literally you're rewriting the past. You're literally, with every 10% move higher or whatever, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to think about, right? And then you have two ends of the spectrum. You have the end that conservative, you cannot keep 100% of your treasury in Bitcoin. Okay. And you have that mindset of like at least a small amount. I believe every company that we've invested in has a Bitcoin treasury. I mean, I want to say I know it, but I don't know it, but I'm pretty sure of it. I can't think of one that doesn't. Okay. And they have revenue in Bitcoin, and they keep Bitcoin, and they distribute Bitcoin. All right. So certainly it's going to be great when the price moves higher. Okay. But they're responsible, and you kind of have to be, because look what we just went through. Okay. If you YOLO'd 100% as a startup of your corporate treasury in Bitcoin at 65,000 and just rode that the whole way, you're probably not in business now, really. Sorry. I mean, you have to pay bills. There are things that you have to do. You're living on a Bitcoin standard. Well, like that works, but your Bitcoin standard in fiat terms of measurement can kill you, right? And then there's the other side of that spectrum, right? Scarcity. I love Scarcity. They're such a fun company. They don't take themselves seriously. They have satscrap.com, which would be a great sponsor for you, by the way. Satscrap.com and the Pepe Flyers and all this fun stuff. They are 100% Bitcoin treasury. 100%. 100% of their income is in Bitcoin. 100% of their treasury is in Bitcoin. And like, you can tell, like, they feel it. Like, we're sitting around 17,000 Bitcoin price. Like, they're not spending, you know what I mean? They're battening down the hat, they're just like surviving. And then all of a sudden we have that move now, and we're pushing 38,000 or whatever. And it looks so good on their balance sheet. But that's a YOLO mindset, right? You have to be a YOLO mindset if you're YOLOing your life savings into an op return on some of the things that they sell in their Sotheby's like auctions. But yeah, I mean, and everything in between, right? And everything in between. But to your answer, yes, I believe everyone has a Bitcoin treasury, and moving forward, their previous month's income as well as their current balance sheet and runway is just going to extend with every move higher.
And I mean, that's just kind of it's a beautiful thing, right? Like, and it's also, I feel, probably a good incentive for businesses to, obviously you need to think about how am I, paying the bills in the immediate future that need to be paid in fiat, but you're also thinking in a more low time preference way, as Bitcoiners are wont to do, to think longer term ahead and think, okay, how, what's this going to look like for us in the next 1 to 5 years, 10 years? Like, I think it's a good mentality shift to have that treasury. And clearly, when we're seeing it now, and I'm sure leading up to and following the next halving, it's going to look really brilliant that all of these companies have Bitcoin treasuries. They're going to be, again, like the idea of, going back and rewriting the history of your cash flow at these times and saying like, oh, wow, like, look at this. If you're denominating in fiat, we have a lot more on hand than we did, 6 months ago. It's a powerful thing, I think. I'm curious because I think one of the critiques that you see from maybe folks more so in crypto land is that, Bitcoin is boring. Nobody's building on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not exciting. Bitcoin's not fun. That's why I'm in crypto, because crypto, that's where the builders are and that's where the fun is. Do you have a message to those folks? Because you actually see the building that's happening on this. You see it in real time and you help boost it. So like, what is your message to the crypto folks who look over at Bitcoin and say, it's just not fun. It's boring. It's not, there's nothing happening.
When you watch like mainstream news and literally they say the exact opposite of what's happening, they're like, meat's bad for you. Bitcoin's a terrible savings, or whatever they say is just like the opposite. It's amazing to me that people really say that like nothing's happening on Bitcoin and that all of this innovation and all of this real work is happening outside of Bitcoin. Because even if you look at these other projects, nothing is going on. Like actually nothing is happening on these other projects. Like I don't even know like I've never met one Bitcoin Cash startup. Let's just say that. I have no idea. Like nobody's ever been like, just strictly a Solana VC. I'm looking at startups that are building on this. Like I don't even know who these companies are, or if they are real companies or there are there's nothing there. And then you look at the actual transactions and the volume and like what's going on there. It's absolutely meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless. And they push this narrative that nothing's going on in Bitcoin. Everything's going on in Bitcoin. Everything that's going on in your shitcoin will come to Bitcoin if it didn't start on Bitcoin, right? But Bitcoin's just too busy to be like the answer to the world's problems to deal with the slick NFT wallet. But like, it'll come, like it'll be here, just takes time, And there's, we say like no one's using Bitcoin, right? No one is using Bitcoin. I mean, in reality, like in the big scheme of things of like how many people, like no one's using Bitcoin. Really, no one is using, it's the internet computer protocol. Like the guy was in the blockchain lab. He helped invent Watson. They always come to, like, they send you this email and it's like, this guy helped work on Watson. Like, that's what they all say. I don't know. and like it's all nonsense. It's all air. And, speaking in simple heuristics, right? You tell children, don't take candy from strangers. There might be a lot of great strangers with a lot of fine candy. All right. It might taste great. It might be very safe, but you tell children that, right? So when you're investing, whether it's in crypto, quote unquote, or any of these startups, like just have Bitcoin. Like that's the heuristic. You might miss out on a little bit of candy, but you won't die.
you won't end up in a crypto van somewhere. Oh man. I mean, I think it's very fair because it's so often that critique is just cope anyway, right? It's like, well, sure, we might be running essentially a Ponzi scheme over here with, butt token, but at least we're having fun, right? Look at it. Look at all the fun we're having. And it's like, I don't know. I've met a lot of Bitcoiners now and Bitcoiners that are starting companies. And I got to say, it's a lot of fun to be around that and to be around people that are actually building things that aren't just vaporware. Like to see people building things that actually have a mission where they say, I want to make money. Obviously, that's why I'm doing this. But in order to make money, I want to have made the world a little bit of a better place. Like I want to actually create value and have that be why I am accruing capital for that value creation, as I should. Because when you put value out there, that's the point. Like making money is a good thing. Like that is great. And when you're doing that in an ethical way by providing real products and services that actually make people's lives better and don't just promise them, like some fucking hexagon Richard Hart scam of like, well, you're going to make, 3,000% and it's risk free and it's so much better than Bitcoin. And it's like, what are you building? Like you might have built a really clever scheme, but it's just that. And, at least Bitcoin founders, Bitcoin VCs can hopefully sleep relatively soundly in the knowledge that at least they're bringing some products and services to the world that are actually going to do a little bit of good and not just rug a bunch of people, but enrich a couple. So, hey, I don't know.
So every company that we've invested in and every Bitcoin company that we look at, like they are real companies. Okay. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand yet about the Bitcoin funding ecosystem is we're still like grouped in with this whole crypto world, right? Where people aren't really separating that these are actual companies. These are actual real companies. Okay. And they lump it in with that we're crypto. And I do calls with crypto VCs. And to be honest with you, I mean, the joke's on me because these people have a ton of money. I mean, I talked to a kid the other day. I mean, he must have been 23 years old. He's got like $100 million in asset under management. I looked at his portfolio. I couldn't tell you one of these things. I don't even know what they are. And I don't know how he's performing or what he's doing, but he basically wants the best Bitcoin deals. He reached out to me because he wants to invest in the best Bitcoin startups. And I was flattered because he has money and I don't. No, just kidding. So yeah, like, let's get on a call. Let's find out about what you're doing. And he couldn't get over the fact that no deal that I have invested in and no deal that I will ever send him will ever have a token. It doesn't register in his brain that there's a way to invest in a company and have equity and like what venture investing is. Okay. It's all about like, when's the token and when can I dump? Okay. And that is such a shitty investor. Like the kind of investor you get from, like, I'm in it to win it with all these companies. Okay. I am here the whole way. All right. It's us versus the world. Okay. I am on your team. There is no like, oh, I can dump my IBEX token in 6 months from now. And like, it doesn't work that way. Like, we are building a company, you know, and it's just a whole nother mindset in these worlds. And he basically said there is not one deal that he's invested, that he can invest in, that doesn't have some kind of token liquidity component. That's like his, like, I'm not allowed to invest. Like, our fund is structured to where I cannot invest in a crypto project that has a token or whatever. Like, it's not allowed. Okay. His is the opposite. He can only invest in these type of things. And I mean, all these people have so much money. I mean, the people who did well during all of this, God bless them, you know, and we're sitting here, look at us.
You know, if that story is not just indicative of the entire crypto land ethos, I don't know what is. That idea that, oh, I can't invest in anything that doesn't have a token that I can dump on retail. Like, because that's what it comes down to, right? They're not going to invest in anything that they cannot, before the general public, you know, or as the general public starts to get in, because they pump it up with bots on Twitter and in their Telegram channels and with their shilly influencers. Pump it up. And then just as soon as it starts taking off and, you know, going to the moon, all the initial big bag holders dump it all and, you know, get some insane returns. Wow, great. Good for them. But like, what a piece of shit. You know, I don't know. I guess it comes down to a question of like, how much are your morals worth? And I'm sure people have a number for that. A lot of people clearly have a number for that. But
I just don't think he knows. I don't think he knows that that's like not cool. I think he just thinks that that's the game.
Like, he doesn't know that shilling vaporware and dumping on retail is maybe not a great thing to do. Or you think his perspective is like, well, as long as, maybe he looks at it very analytically, like, if I'm making money in my fund, that's my job. It doesn't matter how I make the money. It doesn't matter if it's ethical or not. It's just whether I make a return. You think that's what it comes down to?
Well, I'm old enough to be his father. So I wanted to say, son, let me tell you something about investing. Okay. No, but like, okay, so here's an example, right? The need for liquidity. It's not just that, like, if it's about the need for liquidity, here's what happens, right? We invest in Walker Bitcoin. All right. Walker Bitcoin is a new startup. I know the founder. He's a great man. He's expecting. Okay. We invest 100K. And let's say that Walker Bitcoin gets to a Series B level. Okay. And let's say that our investment is marked up 30x. Okay, so if we invested 100,000, okay, and we're up 30x, now we're sitting on $3 million of equity, okay, no token. Now, at that point in time, right, when you get later on in the company, a lot of the early investors, okay, would like to distribute some capital, okay, to their investors, okay, but then also at that later stage, you have a lot of new investors that want to come in. Okay, that want to come in and just start there, because these investors that invest in later stage rounds, they specialize. That's when they come in. They're not in the early pre-seed and seed rounds. Okay, so that's what they look for. So if we went and we sold 20% of our $3 million to a new investor, okay, and then we're able to distribute 5x our to all of those investors that were in that early round for a couple of years, give them 5x their money. We still have 80% of our money. You get to approve that share transfer and say, yes, I like these guys. Okay. And you get to all hug and talk and all of that good stuff. Okay. That's the proper way. All right. That would happen. And by the way, we're still in it for 80% and love you and want to support the hell out of you. And that's how it goes. Right. That's how it would happen. But this in the YOLO generation, this is too much work. We can't do this. I'm going to dump.
God, I mean, and it's such a fundamental difference too between going through rounds of financing and offloading some of your, early round shares to new institutional, investors that want exposure. And as you said, who specialize in that later stage financing versus we're going to buy up 60% of this new shitcoin supply. And as soon as it, launches on 2 exchanges, we're dumping 99 or 100% of it, and we're moving on to the next one. And because one is dumping on retail dumping vaporware on retail and then watching that vaporware token go to zero. One is financing an actual business and then taking some of those proceeds, returning to your investors while still maintaining a position in that company, because presumably you also think this company's not stopping here. They've got a actual good revenue model, not just a revenue extraction model or a money extraction model. Because that's what these shitcoins are, right? It's just extraction. And the sad thing is that it's like so many of these crypto projects pitch themselves as super cypherpunk, right? And they're so like we want to give money back to the little guys and not just to Wall Street, but it's like you're just doing a hyper condensed, hyper accelerated version of the Wall Street rug pull on dumb money. Like that's exactly what you're doing. You're just doing it much faster and with a little slicker marketing, maybe, and more apes. I don't know. It just seems just really shitty. So I'm glad that there are Bitcoin VCs out there like yourself, like the folks at Ego Death that are actually looking for good companies that are trying to make a difference and are providing capital to them because you need capital, right? I'm curious because I want to be also conscious of your scarce time in this world. I know you are a busy man. You are helping these companies, but is there anything you can say about anything that's like public, just about companies that you're really excited about right now, that you're like, man, I'm like, they're kicking ass right now. They're doing, bringing in solid numbers. They're growing their user base. They're growing their revenue, or maybe just one that's still a little bit early, but you're really stoked about because they've got a great idea. Can you share any of that? Any specific, or not too specific, but specific enough?
Yeah, why not? Worst that could happen is I just get yelled at by them. So I am so excited about every Bitcoin startup that has not died. That is just incredible to have gotten through this. And I've been through some bear markets. You've been through some too. Okay. After
this is actually my first, technically. I'm still new here.
Oh my God. This one's brutal, bro.
Yeah.
After Mt. Gox, after Silk Road, that was a tough one. That felt like that. I thought that was bad. That is nothing compared to this. Okay. And in 2017, after ICOs, nothing. This has been tough. Everything from the BlockFis and the failures and SVB and just so much. It's just been brutal. If you survived this, you should get a Medal of Honor. You have survived such a hard time, especially if you're an exchange. If you're an exchange, the trust level for exchanges and their business is just couldn't be worse, right? And I think nearly every exchange that we've invested in is having record months, and wow. in every way. And a lot of them are public about it. Relay is not very shy about it, having month after month of records, right? And we've only had a couple of companies that didn't make it. And if you look at how many are supposed to fail, they haven't failed yet. They have survived through the hardest possible conditions to be a Bitcoin company. And then you got choke point 2.0, and then you can't get a freaking bank account, and then you can't even do normal things, right? It's hard enough to just survive. You're like getting debanked, and your operating account goes missing for 22 days till you get a paper check in the mail, okay? And having to deal with those type of things. And yeah, there's a few that didn't make it, really one, actually, in reality. And I would just love to just talk a whole bunch of shit, because he's not even a Bitcoiner. He's not even in the space. But this guy, man, oh my God. I actually want to write something about it. Oh my God. But anyway, no, seriously, every company is doing great. I mean, you want to pick them out. I mean, every exchange, Amber in Australia, Beaver Bitcoin in Canada, Swan Bitcoin here, adding different products. Strike, you've seen their news lately. We have a couple of companies that are in Wolf. It's top secret, right? The Wolf Accelerator is going on for their third cohort right now. Two companies that Lightning Ventures had already invested in prior to them getting accepted to Wolf. Makes me look like I know what I'm doing, at least a little bit. So that's kind of nice. They're having record months. Slice, for example, I love Slice. 500,000 downloads, records, shattering records. I believe even companies that we're not invested in, like Albi, I think are having record months. Some companies, it takes a little while to find, to pivot. Vita, Lyle Pratt, super accomplished team. Like, they've pivoted a couple of times into different areas, and they've built a ton of shit that works. And you're kind of involved a little bit to see that process, to see it start to happen, to have an AI agent that's going to stand in front of your spam, to be paid for every message that comes into your box, to start to implement these things, to have an AI person answer your phone for you and be like, Walker's phone. And then you're like, give him a British accent, blah, blah, blah. And to like get some of these things that are pivoting and coming together through teams that have done it before, and they know how to save money, and they're not out there YOLOing. Every company is doing great. Zaprite, Zaprite was interesting because they went so long without an update, and just a few calls here and there, checking in on the founder, and then bam, Parker Lewis joins. Bam, Will joins. Bam, no longer free, subscription only. You know what I mean? And it's like, bam, partnership with Unchained for, corporate accounts, and like everything starts happening. The Bitcoin company, Ben Price, I believe he had a record month this month, just killing it. That's gift cards. When you hit a profitable moment. Okay. Forget about all the neobank stuff. Forget about card linked offers and everything else that you want to roll out down the roadmap. But like, when you can get your company to a point where you finally hit that cash flow break even, like, that's a huge moment. Look at Jan 3. For crying out loud. Jan 3 is all over the world meeting with world leaders. We were lucky to even get in that round. Trust me, they did not need our pittance, okay? But they liked us. And, we make up for in heart what we lack in check size. And they're all over it right now. How are they going to make money? I mean, we'll see. You're DCAing nation states. Let's see what comes of it. And they were heavily involved with the volcano bonds. I believe that's shifted now, Volcano Energy. But I mean, every company, man, and they're bringing Bitcoin to every end of the world, and it's just so exciting, right? The Lightning Network connecting every country on the earth. Okay, I mean, like, remember those early like Lightning Network graphs, where you'd see this like visualization. Now it's like freaking ball of yarn, right? But early on there weren't that many, and I picture the world that way when I think about a lot of our portfolio companies. I picture this map, okay, and you can see in every one of these companies, you can see them connected, right? You can see that Strike's Send Globally network is connecting the entire world, right? And then you have Pouch in Philippines with Ethan, and you have Osmo, and you have all of them all over the world, okay? Neutron Pay in Vietnam, okay? And you all connect through these rails. And now you can start to send money from fiat over Lightning into fiat in their native country, and both the people have no idea that Bitcoin was even involved, and that just gives me goosebumps to just think about. I was on a call yesterday, this guy in India, and he was like some crypto guy, and I'm like talking to him about, we just invested in a Indian remittance Bitcoin startup, and he's like, there's no way that works. And I'm like, what's your phone number? And I plug in his Indian number, and boom, $1 from my Chase account lands INR in his account. You know what I mean? That is incredible. And that type of stuff just gets me super excited.
Man, that just got me pumped up. Like, I mean, because I love to hear about this. And I think that the more people that hear about all of the incredible companies that are, and these teams too, that are just building out incredibly useful, real world solution solving tech on top of Bitcoin, in and around Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Even I think you've got a couple of companies that are utilizing Nostr as well and building on Nostr. Like, that's incredible. And they're solving real problems. They are they're forced to be probably more frugal because of recent bear marketiness. But now you're seeing this kind of explosion, right? And people are starting to become profitable. They're having a positive cash flow. Like, it's amazing to see that. And especially getting to just, you meet some of these folks at Bitcoin conferences and you're like, man, couldn't happen to a better guy or gal. Like, you love to see these people succeed because their heart's in the right place. And I think that, not to sound too mushy, but I think that genuinely matters. And if you want to build something that's lasting and that is going to have a positive impact, you need to have founders and a founding team, and also VCs whose hearts are in the right place. And so I think that's a beautiful kind of alignment of values. And I'm just glad that it's happening out there, But Muzz, this has been awesome. Last question, off topic, but anything you're reading right now that when you're not, giving advice and doing that, or anything that you would recommend book wise? I like to ask this question just to mellow it out at the end.
Okay, so outside of like all the boring venture capital books and outside of all that stuff.
Yeah, well, anything you want, really.
Okay. So yeah, but there's just too many VC books that no one cares about.
All right,
but
fair.
There's a really cool spiritual book. It's called Living Untethered. And my wife, Anna, runs a Bitcoin and spirituality all-women's book club. Okay,
Oh.
So it's very big. Carla would be a great candidate. I might be able to get her in, but, we have that distance problem. But anyway, the book is called Living Untethered. It's by Michael Singer, and it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. The audiobook is not as good because it's one of those things where you read like 3 sentences and you just have to like stop and just like think about like everything I've done in my entire life and who I am as a person and like why am I here and like am I an asshole and whatever, and then you like highlight that part and then you read like another half a page and you're just like, wow, I'm never gonna get through this book. But yeah, it's really cool.
Well, nice. I appreciate the recommendation. And then I will link Lightning Ventures and you in the show notes. I'll also link your podcast as well for folks that want to check that out, because you're talking to founders, you're talking to other VCs all the time. Anywhere else that people should go to check out more, or website best? What do you say?
Well, you have a podcast. We do a few little interviews with founders when we invest and try to get something into the archives. Okay. So, if anyone is interested in investing in Bitcoin startups, you can click the join button on our website, ltng.ventures. And if you just fill that out, we will send you an invitation to join our group that bypasses some wait period and paperwork and other things. You can just fill that out, and you can click what kind of Bitcoiner you are, and maybe if you have some special skills or something that you want to note, because that's what it's all about, right? And it's great for networking also. It's not just about whether you're investing or not. It's about just being a part of the network. We've had people who are in our syndicate who didn't invest in a deal and ended up becoming advisors with companies. Because they have specialized knowledge in ad tech or whatever, and they ended up, and that's all them, right? And that's all great, and it doesn't benefit me; it just benefits the companies, which I guess benefits me, right? Because they're beloved portfolio companies. So just getting quality people in the group is great. I meet people sometimes and they're like, "Oh, I'm not really investing," I mean, it's like, that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You're seeing deals. You're putting together. You're getting your brain around some of the best opportunities that are out there. So that's the way you can get started investing. If you are a founder, if you're building something, if you are raising a round or getting ready to raise a round, we're a great vehicle for that. Everything from early stuff that maybe doesn't have a VC, but certainly are incorporated and everything else, to later stuff like Strike, Series B. We had a little allocation in that round too. And we can often help fill out your fundraise. So if you were raising $2 million and you had $1.5 million, maybe we can help you with that and bring some of the true Bitcoin community involved, and you never know what you're going to get out of there. So that's really what we're all about. And we're just going to keep trucking on. We're going to do the best that we can, Walker. And for Christ's sake, man, I can't believe that we got through this bear market. Like it was very hard for us, just like everyone else.
Man, well, you're coming out of the tunnel now. I lied. I have one more very short question, because I want to just hear your elevator pitch for why should people invest in Bitcoin companies instead of just putting their money in Bitcoin?
The number one question that Bitcoin VCs get asked. That's what we have to thwart, right? And it's interesting because because LPs and investors in Bitcoin funds are smarter than the average person. Okay. Anyone who's investing in a Bitcoin venture fund is way smarter than somebody who's investing in a generalist VC's next fund, because that person that invests in is not comparing his investment to Bitcoin. Okay. That person is like, oh, this is the guy, he's going to invest in electric sneakers and, blah, blah, blah. And they don't compare it with like Bitcoin because they're not even like cool like that, right? So LPs in the Bitcoin land, yes, right? We have to outperform Bitcoin. We have to outperform the best performing asset over the last 10-year period, okay? And it has been the best performing asset over a 10-year period, but not for that entire 10-year period. And when you look at smaller time frames in there of years, there are many Bitcoin startups or early stage venture startups that have outperformed Bitcoin as a whole over that time. There's two real ones because there's not many public comps to use. We have to use like Coinbase and Kraken, and Coinbase is like a 4,000x from their early round to when they went public. And then the stock probably cratered from there. I mean, but I just mean, you get the idea, right? And Bitcoin didn't do that. And there were times over that period where, Kraken had returned 115x and the Bitcoin had returned, 45 to 50x. Okay. So they both did very well. But it should outpace it, right? Now, the difference is if you were investing in, pick a company, right? Like Start9, Okay. The chances of something like Start9 going from pick evaluation, right? Let's just use round numbers. The chances of a Start9 going from 10 million to 100 million, okay, in like a year and a half, okay, I've seen those things happen. I have personal angel investments that are up 80x, okay, in less than 3 years. That's going to be very hard for Bitcoin to do at this point in time. It's going to be really hard for Bitcoin to just 10x from here to 360,000. Now, sure, it can happen, right? Because it's Bitcoin and nobody has any Bitcoin and it's a big world and it's Bitcoin, right? So it could happen. But at the same time, it can happen with these startups a lot faster and can go a lot more. So I like to think about it as it's a way to diversify your HODL position, okay? And no, I wouldn't come into 3 angel investments for 6 figures each and do that. I would just invest small amounts, right? I would read the updates. I would follow along and I would just get my teeth, before I went out there and really did anything substantial. Now, conversely, what are the odds of Start9 failing and going to zero? And what are the odds of Bitcoin failing and going to zero? So there's certainly another risk that needs to be considered there. It's not likely that Bitcoin's going to fail and go to zero, right? And with a lot of these startups, no matter how great they're doing, there is certainly a significant risk, okay, that they may never achieve traction or a substantial exit, okay? Or maybe you only get 3 times your money back. Okay, that's a lot of people don't talk about that. It's like it's either to the moon or zero. There are many exits where you just get your money back. Hey guys, we invested $100,000 13 months ago. It wasn't the best outcome. Maybe you saw the story. Here's a note from the founder. We got our $100,000 back and we're going to wish him well. Okay. Now your money was tied up for 13 months. Okay. What did Bitcoin do in that 13 months? It could have went down. It just did for a really long time. It went down. Okay. And now you're going to look at that and be like, oh, that sucks, man. I got my $1,000 back and Bitcoin's now 30% higher. Well, it goes the other way too, so it's all about timing. Our first fund, you could have sold less than half a Bitcoin or half a Bitcoin, let's call it. And you could have invested 25,000 at like a $60,000 Bitcoin price. Okay. The Bitcoin price, if you're measuring your wealth in dollars, sorry if I'm like dumb, but if you are keeping score in dollars, you're down 50% right now, give or actually less than that. We rallied a little bit, right? We're at 38, but you haven't done great. And like our fund, especially after these next markups happen, has a positive IRR. So I don't know, but I don't know what's going to happen next, And then that timing aspect of it is a crapshoot wherever you're at, right? Because right now, if you have $38,000, is it a better bet to invest $38,000 into any fund or a Bitcoin venture fund or any VC fund or anything, right? Or is it just better to buy one Bitcoin, stick it in your cold wallet and fucking forget about it? It's 38,000. Might want to stack one, And when you're like Walker and you already have hundreds and thousands of Bitcoins, you put in 30 grand into a venture fund and call it.
This is for anyone listening. I got into this space in 2020. I am a recent adopter, but I appreciate that context, Muzz, because I think it's important, right? And it's a question that people obviously ask you a lot. And I think for me, at least, the one other side that I'll add is just, it's a cool thing, even if it's not with very much money, but to invest in Bitcoin companies if you believe in what they're doing. And just from I think that what you're doing is great. I think it's going to, be a valuable product, service, and I think it's going to make the world a little bit better. Like that's, investing in Bitcoin companies is like actually effective altruism, but you actually might make some money off it and you're not just a masquerading piece of shit like most effective altruists. But yeah, with that, Muzz, unless there was something else you wanted to toss on top.
I can't. We'll never get out of here, right?
I know. Well, we'll just have to do it again then. That's the only solution.
All right, you got it.
We'll do a market update leading up to the halving. How about that? See where things are. But man, Muzz, thank you so much. I'll link everything in the show notes. I appreciate your time and all you're doing for the Bitcoin space. I hope people listen to this and go, if nothing else, just check out these companies that you mentioned that are building really cool shit, because that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, thanks, Walker. You're the best, man. Give my love to Carla.
I will, man. Cheers. And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring another fucking Bitcoin podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net or hit me up on social media. On Nostr, head to primal.net/Walker. And on Twitter, search for @WalkerAmerica or @TitcoinPodcast. You can also watch the video version of this show on X or on YouTube by going to youtube.com/@WalkerAmerica or Rumble by searching for @WalkerAmerica. Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million. But Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time to listen to another fucking Bitcoin podcast. Until next time, stay free.